sign. That's the sound of the bell. Okay, so we're getting the show. Well, thank you for joining the Bible study tonight. So we're going to be back in the Word, and we're going to be jumping in tonight. We finished with Acts chapter 19, verse 36 last week. Okay, and we're going to pick up verse 37, and we're going to finish up chapter 19 this week, and we're going to go into verse 20. We're trying to go to verse 12, but I'm not sure how far we'll get tonight. There's a lot in here as usual. But as we saw, there Paul was at Ephesus, and he was talking, and he was basically telling people to turn away from idols to the living God. And him and a few of his companions were ministering and sharing that with people. And then Demetrius, the silversmith, and his the people of his trade got really upset, mainly him, and he rallied his co-workers, who then rallied the town and get everybody upset. And they all rushed to this big kind of amphitheater place. And they don't have Paul, but they have Paul's companions that are in there. And the whole town's in an uproar. They're in an uproar. And so the town leader, some people think it was the mayor of the town, and that was somebody who's kind of like almost like a mediator, somebody who represented the Jewish people or the Gentiles, who Gentiles represented the Gentile town, but also kind of represented Romans' interests. So there was kind of an in-between, make sure the town ran smooth and also make sure that the Romans were still in control of it. It's kind of like a magistrate or a mayor of the town. And so he comes up, and this is him speaking here. This is basically the leader of the town is speaking to them. And you got this mob, and you got some of Paul's companions in that amphitheater. And here's what he said in verse 37. We're going to pick up right here. It says, for you, and I underline you because he's saying you crowds, you group. He's speaking to the whole group here. And this man has wisdom. You're going to see wisdom. This guy, there's a reason why Rome put him in that position, because you're going to see some wisdom in the way he navigates this. So he says, for you large group of really angry people, have brought these men before us who aren't guilty of any crime. Okay, and then he gets specific. They are neither temple robbers nor blasphemers of our gods. So see, he covers two things, and I think that's really neat. So they were neither temple robbers. So Paul's companions had not been guilty of robbing their temple of Artemis or Diana, as they call it, or any other temple. So they weren't thieves of any of the temples or the religious stuff, okay? Nor were they blasphemers specifically of the goddess. So he said, look, they hadn't done anything, no theft, no nothing at any of our temples in town, Diana or any of them. And also, they hadn't said anything in specific against our supreme deity, Diana. And that's really neat, because when you think about it, and we're going to look at a minute in Scripture, Paul and his companions, they had spoken against idolatry. But not once is it recorded they said anything against Diana, their supreme thing they're worshiping, which is really wisdom on Paul's part. So this town leader says, hey, they didn't do either one of these things. All right, and so then, look here, we're going to back up just a few verses. Look, this is Acts chapter 19, verse 26, because what he just said was confirmed by Demetrius, the scripture, where it says Demetrius, the silversmith, was complaining. All right, he's the one who rallied all this mob. But it says in verse 26, says, you see and hear that not only at Ephesus, but almost all over the province of Asia, this Paul has persuaded people to believe his teaching and has misled a large group of people, claiming that gods made by human hands are not really gods at all. So you see, this man who brought this, stirred up this mess, was actually confirming what the town leader had just said, that Paul was just speaking against idols. He said nothing specific about their goddess Diana, and he hadn't robbed the temple or did anything else. So this man was right. And but he was really wise to do that, to really just pull the focus to the people. But now watch what he does. He said, look, you guys brought these people who hadn't really done anything worthy to even be in this place. They've done nothing wrong. And then he zeroes in here And the reason he's doing, he's trying to bring them back to the same page. I mean, have you ever been in an angry mob or witnessed one on TV or even read about them? Rarely, the whole group generally doesn't know why they're there. Some people are just, they're going with the flow. Somebody's mad, and a lot of people, they just want to be mad. They just want something to get upset about. They want an adrenaline dump. They want something to scream about. So normally you have one or two people or a small group that have an agenda, and then they rally everybody else, and half the other people don't know why they're there. They're just part of the crowd. So, but see, the reason he said this town leader, he said, look, he's trying to help people understand. In Acts 19:32, which is a little bit back, not as far. It says, now some shouted one thing and some another, for the gathering was in confusion, and most of the people did not know why they had come together. So the vast majority of the group that was in there yelling and screaming had no clue why they were in there yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in that people follow passion. They follow that stuff, and they don't really understand. All right. So, but look what the town leader does. So he starts off in verse 37. Now you brought these men together, and just so the group, even though half you don't know what's going on here, they didn't do this and they didn't do this. They did nothing deserving to even be here. Okay. And then he zeroes in on the specific culprit. That's where the wisdom of this town leader is. He said, so if Demetrius, you see that? He speaks to the crowd and says, hey, they didn't do anything wrong. Okay. And then he says, by the way, you who stirred all this mess up. So if Demetrius and the men of his trade have a case against someone, the courts are open. They can appear before the judge and press charges. Okay, and then he speaks to the group again. But if this is to everybody, but if you're looking for anything other to bring up, this is to the Demetrius, the group, and the crowd. If there's any other reason that you've got to, problem got with these guys, it must be argued before the court and settled there, not here. Don't you, so he's speaking back to the group again, tell them about the severity of what's about could happen. Don't you realize we're putting our city in danger of being accused of a riot by Roman authorities? There's no good explanation we can give them for all this commotion. But you see how the wisdom in the sky, you see why he was appointed that position. He was, hey, group. And he was just in that wisdom. He said, hey, group, I know most of you don't have a clue why you're here. But these guys really didn't do anything deserving to be here. And by the way, you guys, you troublemaker, Demetrius and your guys, you're the ones who stirred this mess up. And if you really have a problem, you need to take them to court and leave the city out of it. This guy was sharp. And then in verse 41, after he said that, he dispersed the crowd and sent them away. And I thought, man, had a lot of wisdom in the way he navigated that. Just tremendously good. Now I want to go ahead and jump into chapter 20. We've got a lot of good stuff here. Okay. It says when the uproar finally died down, you see, finally, so yes, there was dispersion happening, people were going home, but there was still some fussing going on. It took a while for everybody to finally calm down. It says Paul gathered the believers and encouraged their hearts, and kissed them, said goodbye, and left for Macedonia. All right. And now, I'm going to go ahead and read verse 3, and then we'll talk a little bit about this. It says, and stayed there, okay, and every place he passed through, he brought words of great comfort and encouragement, verse 2, to the believers. Then he went on to Greece, and he stayed there for 3 months. Just as Paul was about to sail to Syria, so just as he was getting onto the boat, he was about to sail, or he was either probably on the boat, he learned of a plot against him by the Jews. So he decided to return by going through Macedonia. So Paul gets on the boat and he learns of a plot to kill him or hurt him or do something to him on the boat. So we'll talk a little bit about this. Paul was in Ephesus and then left for Macedonia to visit the churches in Philippi, Thessalonica, and Berea. Those 3 churches. And then he was going to go down into Greece, which is Athens and Corinth. And then Paul planned to sail to Syria from there, but found out about a plot. So he had a plan to go on the ship and go over these places. And then whenever he get on the ship, planned to go over to Macedonia and then down to Greece, he finds out the Jews are plotting. So then he gets off the boat and reroutes and makes another plan. All right. So it's really, there was apparently, there probably was some people, some assassins on the boat or something on there. Somehow or another he found out. Okay. But I want you to look at what happens. The next verse, he finds out in verse 3 that the Jews are plotting to kill him. And now verse 4, 7 men accompanied him as far as western Turkey. Now I'm reading the names and I will talk about what happened here. They were Sopater, son of Purus from Berea, Aristarchus and Secundus from Thessalonica, Gaius from Derbe, and Timothy, Tychicus, and Trophimus from western Turkey. Say that all that fast. These men went ahead and were waiting for us at Troas, okay? But see, these 7 men accompanied him as far as western Turkey. They accompanied him until he got completely out of the region of Ephesus and away from wherever that ship was. They accompanied him. And I think it's kind of neat because those 7 faithful men of God, they were traveling to help Paul, but here's what I really see in the context, because in verse 3, there's a plot to kill him. Verse 4, here comes 7 men to travel with him. All right. In the context, it looks like these 7 men basically were a security detail to protect Paul. That's what it was. The 7 men were with him to protect him. And they escorted him out of the danger and away from the people who wanted to hurt him or kill him. And then he continued on his journey. Kind of neat. Paul had a security team just to help him get out of there. Let's see, something about this too is you think this was a response to fear, but it really wasn't. Paul found out about a plot. So the other brothers said, hey, we're going to go with you. We're just going to help you along your way, but we're going to watch out for you and protect you. It's like God gave them information and they responded wisely on that. They were proactive. They didn't just say, oh, blessed be God, I'll be fine. And Paul kind of went on because there was enough concern there that people said, well, we're going to go with you. We're going to make sure you're okay, that you get where you're going. But I want to look at the map here. This actually, right here where we're studying, this is Paul's 3rd missionary journey that he's on right now. This is his 3rd one. And you see right here, see he was in Ephesus, and this is where he was planning on getting on the ship, and he found out the Jews were about to kill him, okay? So apparently he got onto another boat or something, somehow or another he got in another thing, and then the 7 brothers went with him, and then he goes over here to Ephesus, and then to Troas, and then he goes across when it says, this is, right here's Macedonia, all this is Macedonia. And then he goes down to what's say Greece, and then the little purple dots are he's coming home. But I want to talk about this right here at the bottom, Paul's 3rd missionary journey, which lasted approximately 4 years. Look how far he went. 2,515 miles, of which 1,190 were by sea and about 1,325 were by land. Over 4 years. These are some tough guys, man. These are tough men and women in those days to travel like that. I was completely by, foot, donkey, horse, boat, whatever. It was amazing. But I just want to kind of show you a little bit about that. But Paul faced a lot of difficulties. It was hard. In Macedonia, it was hard. It was almost like, I don't know, the Jews were just so sick and tired of him. This is his 3rd journey. That his reputation was there. The Jews were tired of him. They were ready to get rid of him. They were done with him. All right. Now the church was established at this point. The Ephesian church was in its infancy, but it was growing. And I shared last time that church at its peak reached 45,000 people. That was the largest church of the ancient world, was in Ephesus. And it's neat because that was where it's neat because Ephesus was the hub of the worship of the goddess Diana. They had their huge temple with all their prostitutes and all their problems right there. And God established a church, the largest church of that day. And I also think it's neat whenever Demetrius and his friends, I shared this last time, but I want to hit it again. When they said this trade of ours is in danger. Paul is putting this craft of ours in danger so that basically we're going to have to go out of business because of what he's doing. They were actually prophesying, they didn't realize they were prophesying of a future time when the Ephesian church would be so large and the worship of Diana would go down so much that they couldn't make an adequate living selling idols. So they didn't realize they were actually acting prophetically because that's what was coming. God was going to put them out of business, which is good. But I want to kind of hit this because by his 3rd journey, the Jews that didn't trust Christ had hardened their heart toward Paul, and they were aggressive. They were after him. So I want to let's get a glimpse of what happened. This is 2 Corinthians 7, 5, and 6, and this was written after this 3rd missionary trip. So look at what he writes here. And this is Paul. It says, even after we came into the province of Macedonia. See, this is referring to what we just talked about in Acts chapter 20. So when Paul goes in there, it says, look, we found no relief. You see, the Jews were harassing him. He had a hard time in Ephesus. He said, even when we got into Macedonia, it didn't let up. He said, it didn't let up. We found no relief. And you see that even after a week, it wasn't just Paul. Everybody in his group, everybody connected with that Christian movement were having a hard time. But I want you to look at this. We were restless and exhausted. You see that? They were restless. They were wore out from the journey, from representing God, but they were restless. Now, they wanted to see more. They wanted more accomplished. They wanted to see a lot more lives change. So their spirit was crying along, but they were wore out from the oppression and the harassment and the resistance that they were encountering. Look at this. Troubles met us at every turn. Look at this is Paul writing. In other words, every day it seemed like it never let up. Every time we tried something, every turn. Well, let's do this. Trouble. Well, let's try this over here. Trouble. Let's try this over here. Oppression, opposition. Everywhere they went, everything they tried, they ran into resistance. That's hard. All right, look at this. And now Paul's going from the group to him specifically. See where where it starts in verse 5. We had no reason. We came in this. We had these problems. We were restless and exhausted. Look what Paul says. Then he gets personal here. Outwardly, I faced conflicts and inwardly emotional turmoil. And I mean, Paul says, look, outwardly I faced conflict. Outwardly, I had problems. Outwardly, I had resistance. Outwardly, I had just constant harassment. I had people against me. I had the devil against me. I had everything fighting me outwardly. Outwardly, I faced constant, perpetual fights is what it means. But look at this, and inwardly, emotional turmoil. Yeah. I want to say something more on verse 6. If you are a wholehearted, all-in, fully committed Christ follower, you're going to have seasons and times like that. Where it seems like outwardly there's stuff that just is fighting you and harassing you and bothering you. But inwardly you're going to be in turmoil because the call of God is so strong and the plans of God are so strong in your life. And you want God's best so bad that inside sometimes your emotions will just get the better of you because you're clinging to a dream. You're hanging on for that loved one. You're just hanging on. So inwardly, sometimes we just have it's like a storm in there because God is doing so much and we want so much, for people and it's just tough. But outwardly, my gosh, outwardly, things ain't going the way we need them to, or we don't think, they're not working. So that's what any wholehearted believer will deal with that. Outward conflicts and inward emotional roller coasters. And in verse 6, but God, I love it. You've heard me say this before. Yeah, it's like everything went to D-O-D-O almost, but God. But God. In verse 6, who always, look at it, and you see his heart turn from the mess into this place of sweetness, but God, who always knows how to encourage the depressed, encouraged us greatly by the arrival of Titus. Now, I don't think I've never heard this said, and I don't know that I've ever seen this until today when I was looking at this. Right here, Paul says he was struggling with depression. You see that? The great apostle himself was struggling with depression right here. And his group was depressed. The world had beat him up and wore them out. And inwardly, the call of God and the things of God and the desires of God were wearing them out. So they were depressed. Well, look at that. Well, God knows exactly how to encourage people who are depressed. That's encouraging. That's just good. Well, look at Titus arrived. So and you know what? It's neat. God sent a person who pulled them out of their depression. But most of the time, that's what it is, isn't it? Most of the time, it's somebody with a kind word, or somebody comes along and helps us, or somebody sends us a gift, and somebody does something. Just somebody. Normally, it's a human being who helps us come out of our depression normally. Right. So Okay. Let's see. Okay. And I was confused. I'm like, I got verse 6 on here, but this is different. There's two sets of 6 in second Corinthians and then 6. Oh, well, I got I'm confused myself. Let's keep going. Okay. Verse 6 of Acts chapter 20. It says, as soon as all the Passover celebration were over, we sailed from Philippi. After 5 days, we joined the others in Troas, where we stayed another week. All right, so after the 7 days of Passover, okay, during which people ate only unleavened bread. So, and it was actually referred to instead of the just the days of Passover, it's also referred to the days of unleavened bread. It was they observed that holiday during the week immediately following Passover was wrapped up into a Passover celebration at the end of that week. And so Paul sails for Troas. All right, so he's back on the boat going to Troas. After there, him and the group stayed for 7 days. But I want you to notice Paul, even whenever he was there for Passover, he didn't just rush off. He was there to encourage. He was there to strengthen. Paul didn't miss any opportunities. He made the most of every stop, every place he went. He made the most of. He wanted to encourage the people. He wanted to encourage the church. He wanted to strengthen the believers, and he wanted to win whoever he could over to Christ while he was in town. So he didn't rush. He wasn't like, I'm on the clock. I got to get here. Like, he would pause long enough to help people. That was a real strength in his life. To verse 7, on Sunday, we gather to take communion and to hear Paul preach. And see, we see here an example of a Sunday church gathering in the book of Acts. So we gather to take communion and to hear Paul preach because he was planning to leave the next day. He continued speaking until past midnight. Okay? So who knows when they started? We do know that he kept speaking a long time. Okay, and I like the detail. Many flickering lamps burned in the upstairs chamber where we're living. They could have just put it in verse 8. It was very cozy and comfortable. That's right. Very cozy and comfortable. Sitting in an open window listening was a young man named Eutychus. As Paul's sermon dragged on. Don't you like that? I like it. Luke wrote the books of Acts, and Luke's like, hey, Paul was long-winded here. And the sermon dragged on. Eutychus became drowsy and fell into a deep slumber. He wasn't just dozing; he was sleeping. Sound asleep, he fell 3 stories to his death below. This guy, Paul put him out. He kind of fell out of the window. Oh my gosh! But I want you to something's kind of neat. It's his name. You can laugh about this. Eutychus was a boy, a young man. His name Eutychus, but you know his name. That name Eutychus actually was fortunate or lucky. So let's look at it like fortunate fell out of the window. Lucky fell out of the window. Only God could do, you know what I mean? He was lucky Paul was there. That's it. Yeah, he was really fortunate that Paul's there to raise him back from the dead. Yeah. But see, as Paul's sermon dragged on, so I want to say that even the great apostle Paul's teaching, people still fell asleep. Yeah. What's that, friend? What's that, friend? You wouldn't take a fast from somebody when Are you asking for personal reasons? Thank you, Jack. Thank you. But, well, let's talk a little bit more about this and make people be a little more careful, not fall asleep. But that's encouraging to me because sometimes when I speak, I see people sleeping too. So if they fell asleep under Paul, if it happens like rarely while I'm speaking, that's okay. Young man fell and died. So we can learn from this. There's something we can learn from it. It can be very dangerous to fall asleep during preaching. Who knows what will happen? So Paul went downstairs, bent over the boy, and embraced him. Taking him in his arms, he said to all the people gathered, "Stop your worrying. He's come back to life." And then Paul's in the middle of preaching, guy falls out of the window. 3 stories. Hits this hard ground. I mean, he's all broke up. Who knows what it looks like. And Paul goes down there, look at this. And he goes downstairs, bends over the boy and hugs him and embraces him. Pulls him up into his arms. And the boy comes back to life. Miracle. Paul went back upstairs, look at it, served communion, and ate a meal with them. And I'm sure the young man was back up there. Now, it's not in Scripture, but I feel very confident he was not sitting in the witness. He's probably over in a corner like this. Like, okay, thank you God for that again. No, thank you for that miracle, but I don't want to put you to the test. Where he had left off speaking and taught until dawn. But it's still an enormous joy. They took the boy home alive, and everyone was encouraged. You see that? I think that there's a lot here that Paul was speaking and teaching in this place. And yes, he was taking a long time sharing. But this boy falls out and dies. God literally performs a miracle and brings the boy back up. And then they go back up and pick up right where they left off. Think about the encouragement in that room, because everybody there witnessed God raise somebody from the dead. And I'm sure for most of them, they had never seen anything like it. And so I want to kind of hit is there is a powerful truth here regarding what unfolded here. We must be ready for anything. Also, we must not let anything derail everything. You see that? See, Paul took care of matters, and then he kept going where he felt like God wanted him to go. That's important because often, I would say the primary tactic of the enemy in a Christian's life is distraction. That is the primary tactic he uses. He wants to get you so focused on something else that you miss out on an opportunity, you miss out on God's best. He wants you consumed with something less than God's best through distraction. And that's his number one thing. It's a war of attrition. That's what it is. Rarely does the devil just show up and just blindside you and just mess you up. Normally, he does little things to slowly pull us off track and distract us and suck the life out of what God's got us doing, little by little. But see, Paul actually modeled this, what he did here, exactly what he did. He preached, he went down, ministered this young man. When the boy got up, he went back up and finished what he's doing. But Paul actually modeled that. But he told in 2 Timothy, look what he did right here. He told Timothy, preach the word as an official messenger. Be ready when the time is right, even when it's not. Keep your sense of urgency, whether the opportunity seems favorable or unfavorable, whether convenient or inconvenient, whether welcome or unwelcome. Now, he's speaking of sharing the word of God here in this specific context, but this applies to everything God's got you doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Be ready when the time's right, even when it's not, to represent God. Be ready to pray for people. Be ready to minister to people. Be ready to seek for healing and declare healing. Be ready to hug people and say Jesus can help. Be ready whenever you're whenever you're all prayed up and ready to go. On your worst day, be ready to help people. So I know it's speaking of just teaching the word here, but the truth is the Bible teaches that we are always to be ready to represent Jesus no matter what. Okay. And then Hebrews encourages us also. This is my last verse now, Hebrews 13:16. It says, in Hebrews says, we will show mercy to the poor and not miss an opportunity. You see that? To do acts of kindness for others. For these are the true sacrifices that delight God's heart. See, we're not going to miss an opportunity. We're going to be ready whenever we're having a good day and we're having a bad. It doesn't matter. If somebody needs Jesus and I have an opportunity to represent him, I'm going to. And so Paul communicated that, and then in Timothy, and the writer of Hebrews actually communicates too. We're not going to miss a moment. But once you do the good deed, do the thing, get back on what Father's up to and keep doing that. Okay, think about Father's business just like Jesus was. Don't get derailed, indefinitely. Help people and then pick up right where you were at and keep following Jesus. Okay? Any thoughts or questions before we wrap up tonight? Reminds me talking about that, illusions, the conditions and rail. Yeah. It's just like an addiction. You lose me to think one thing, and things around you and another way. Right. That's good, though. Yeah. Well, he's persistent. He's persistent. Yeah, Brad. It's crazy. It's hard. It's not very fast. Not the thing. The phrase, they were just not up to and your father was feminist. And myself, the lady that I found in the lady in the first group, now we can look at it and certain qualities in the whole time. But it's like that place, but that's just a killer, it's like, what is it? And Charles is a teaching student at the County of Gallery, the situation something. All right. Yeah. We're in D3. Yeah. And then it's all of it, they get into what's happening. That's just, I mean, the reading and straight line. Yeah. And but take a step and second, yes. Sure. And we'll right? We'll take it. It's like that's just moving on. Yeah. I think you mentioned that to me one time before, but yeah. 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 And when I was thinking of things, and tonight, yeah, I was standing alone. Right. And I just got those. Yeah. Yeah, ball coming right at you. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I heard it. I heard it.